How does it feel to be in a brand new environment in Santa Fe, one that's generating positive feelings and ready to move forward? How does that feel to be in that position? How does it feel to be in a room full of people who've got their heads up instead of those who got their heads down? It's great to be up here with you right now because there is a change that's going through not just this state, but through this country. And I'm going to tell you, it is started and it is motivated and it is run by Christian people, not by the opposition. And it's time that we continue to make it happen because we're going to seize that opportunity. You see, when I was introduced a while ago, they alluded to the fact that this has been going on about 3 years ago. Well, it actually started about 4 years ago when a former Representative, Richard Cheney, minority leader, gave me a call one time and he says, "Are you happy with what's going on?" And I said, "No, I'm not." And he says, "Well, how are we going to change it?" And I said, I don't have a clue, but we need to be involved. So he had an idea from another state, and it was an organization that got started, and we sat and started talking about this thing, and he brought it forth, and he says, "Do you mind if we put this together?" I said, "Go for it, Richard. This is a good idea." So he puts this package together, and here's us two ex-legislators standing there talking about it, and I said, "You know, it might be good if we brought in a real live elected legislator into this group to help us." So there was this senator sitting over there that likes to speak loud and throw his voice out and try to get people excited. And his name was Senator Bill Scherer, and he happened to be out of Farmington, so we talked to him. Man, he thought this was a good idea too. So the three of us started building and putting things together. And out of that, we came out with TVAC. Now, we made some ground rules. We said, you know, if we really want to be successful, then we need to deal strictly with moral, biblical issues. We don't want to talk about gun control. We have our opinions about gun control, but we don't want to talk about that. We want to keep this concise and on point. We don't want to talk about the budget. We have concerns and our opinions about the budget, but we want to win. And if we're going to change America back to what it used to be, then we need to stick with what made America great, and that foundation is the good book. So we decided that that's going to be our focus. And in order to do that, you know, as much as we love the size and the growth of the Baptist, we can't do it just by Baptists. We're going to have to reach out to other Christians. So make that a common ground. It's moral, biblical issues. And that's all we've dealt with. And you know what? We were told that it ain't going to happen. And I'll tell you, it was shaky that first year. We won the domestic partnership by one committee vote. That was it. We got on a website. We got people in here to put out the word, and people started responding. You're going to love this. The next year, the majority leader in the Senate came to me and said, "Can you shut them phones off? They're driving us nuts." And I said, "Oh, Senator, are you telling me that you're going to vote against domestic partnerships?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Well, I guess the phone will keep ringing because I can't stop it unless you agree." So we won 3 of them that year. And the margins got bigger to the point that last year, 9 biblical issues, all of them went down. Every single one of them. We won them all. And it's going to continue to happen. And now people are starting. And we ended up, last year we had a World Biblical Conference. We got high name folks coming down here. We had, and I know many of us, many of you in this room was at that biblical conference. And we had the big boys coming in. They're wanting to know how did you guys do that? And they want to make that run. And I'm going to make one big pitch. Where's Joe? Joe? I'm going to make a pitch because you and I are going to talk about ERLAC in the Baptist Convention because they need to copy this, what we're doing, and quit trying to venture out and make all the mistakes that we made in getting it done, because what we got works. We now have about 10,000, almost 10,000 people in the TVAC organization that we're emailing out information to. We don't bombard you with a lot of information either. We give you, when we have a point to make, we send it to you. We're not just going to talk to you just to be sending messages. I don't know about you, but I got lots of messages and I do a lot of deleting. There's a guy sitting in here that sends me 10 a day and I delete 5. Thank you, Will. but we don't do that. We don't waste your time. We have a job to do, and I'm going to tell you, and people in my Sunday school class will certainly vouch for this. I spend a lot of time in front of that Sunday school class talking to them about being involved in government. Now, I did a little research. I'm not real big in it, but I did a little. I haven't found anywhere in the good book where it says Christians should not be involved in politics. I have found a whole list of atheists that want us to stay out of politics and have been telling us to do that. In fact, in the good book, I find lots of references to where God created it. And if he created it, he sure as heck wanted us to be involved in it. And that's what we have to do. We have to reach out and make it happen. So we get this opportunity tonight for my compadres to make this presentation to explain to you what TVAC is really doing and how you can help us expand. When you put and they paid $25 a piece to go to that World Conference in Albuquerque, and we were nervous as a cat. We didn't have an idea whether we was going to get 2 people there or 100 people there. And we ended up with almost, I think, 1,600 people from throughout the state of all denominations. I was sitting there, and Dr. Bunce and Archbishop were sitting together. And I had passed a little note over to the Archbishop, and I said, who would have thought 4 years ago an old redneck Baptist boy from Clovis would go over and have a little meeting with the Archbishop, and all of a sudden we had a coalition because we saw eye to eye on what was happening to our Bible. And then from that, we've got a room full of people from all over the state making it happen. It can happen. It is happening. We want you to participate. With that, I'm going to bring up Richard Cheney. He is a former minority leader of the House, a good Republican from Farmington, and I'm going to have with him is our voice in the Senate, Senator Bill Scherer from Farmington, who is not a very bashful. In fact, neither one of these guys are very bashful, and I want you to help me give him a great big welcome.
Some of my kinfolks just turned over in their grave right there. My mother was a Tennessee Democrat. Some of you might be old enough to remember Senator Estes Kefauver. Her brother was his campaign manager. I was the first Republican in that family. And my aunt from Tennessee was asking my mother one time, said, well, is Richard involved in politics? And I have been for some time, since about 1960 actually. Anyway, mother was trying to avoid the issue, and my aunt kept pushing it. And finally it came down, well, yes, he is involved. And I said, well, what party? And my mother said, well, he's a Republican. And they said my aunt hung her head and said, oh, that's too bad. So I don't know. We try with TVAC we're trying to keep it bipartisan. But if you take a real hard look at the two platforms of the parties, it's very difficult because of the Democratic platform and is written, and they are really opposite. And I don't know about you, but I didn't vote for anybody to go to Congress this year and get along. I want them to continue that fight. I don't want compromise. And I have little use for moderates. We're going to have moderate integrity on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We're going to have moderate fiscal responsibility on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. I'll tell you what, I really love my wife, but I'm not going to tell her, honey, I love you, but just kind of moderately. You have to be passionate about politics, and you have to be passionate to change it. And Baptists in the early days of this country had a history of passionate politics and passionate change for politics. And we have to reignite that today, I believe. And I have to tell you, one other thing. I said we'd just take 20 minutes, but I forgot Walter was going to speak before me. And then I want it to be a little bit light, because I do have a tendency to get kind of intense about it. But one thing, too, I want you to know that Brother Joe Bunch is responsible for a lot of this, because out of his church, as Walter told you, I'm the one that called him and said, boy, things are bad down here. We got to do something. And then I got a Gary Risley, who now goes to Bloomfield, to the First Baptist Church at Bloomfield, is our kind of in-house attorney. And Gwen Alston, out of the First Baptist Church at Bloomfield, is our CPA, is our treasurer. So First Baptist out of Bloomfield has pretty good representation on that committee. Wasn't planned that way. A lot of them just volunteered, and I haven't let them go. But I do want to tell you that Walter Bradley has, the work that he's done up here has just been incredible. And I'm not sure we could have accomplished it without him. But kind of how I got started at it was, got the idea. I had an unusual opportunity, and I served in the New Mexico Legislature for 10 years, and then I was out for about 10 years, maybe a little longer, and then I went back. And I just could not believe the deterioration that had taken place. And I don't mean these are bad people, I don't mean this, but in the quality of the legislators that were going there to actually want to do something for the good of the state of New Mexico and not just to go fill a seat. And those seats had been taken by human secularists, humanists, and that disturbed me. And so when I got out the last time, we did. Things were going pretty bad, and I called Walter and I called Bill Scher and 3 or 4 other guys up at Farmington that I know are real solid Christians, and I said, we have to do something. So we got together and we made some feeble efforts and then got started pretty good. And then we started off, kind of joined forces. I'll have to tell you that Pastor Steve Smotherman down at Legacy Church in Albuquerque has been a tremendous source of assistance for us. And we've really appreciated it. I think probably they put out, Dean and Jay and Walter put out the news in the Baptist New Mexican that Bill and I were going to be here. You would probably have had a better attendance if you'd just said Bill Scher and had left me out of it, because it's been a new experience for me. I was in Kevin Parker's church. I spent a lot of my life running from God. I was a little bit like Jonah. And I'm going to say that I might be a little hard-headed, but Janie's sitting over there, and I don't want to hear her say amen. So when I finally got an opportunity, it's been a totally new experience. And I've been able to get up in public debates with some of the best debaters in the state of New Mexico and talk to them about it. But I've been up in front of a couple of your congregations. They scare me to death. And I haven't quite lost the ability to talk, and I tell you that. I suffered, and wives always keep us on the right track. I had a little suffer. I thought it was an ear problem that I had. Turns out it was, and Dr. Clark can probably pronounce it. I can't. I'm a New Mexico Aggie, but I had a little TMJ. And it was painful. I thought I had an earache, and then I thought I had abscessed teeth. And turns out it was TMJ, and they gave me a little bit of stuff, and it's cleared up. But they sent me home with a list of instructions of things to try to avoid. And Janie was reading them, and she started laughing, and I said, what's funny? I said, this isn't funny, this hurts. And she says, let me read you what this says. It says here to avoid overuse of the jaw. And she looked at me and says, you're doomed. So anyway, we want to take just a minute and talk about how TVAC got started. Talk a little bit about what the accomplishments have been through God's work. I'll tell you what, it was just amazing. When we lost some legislative races, we had won the domestic partnership bill by 1 vote, and then we lost about 5 people. We'll go through that in a minute. And we thought, as Janie said, we thought we were doomed. But we won the next time by about 7 votes instead of just that 1. So Senator Scher is going to help me. I'll tell you, he's done yeoman service. Where'd you go to, Bill? And I hope this doesn't turn out like the Geico commercial, because I'm going to push the buttons on the computer up here to change the slides, and Bill's going to talk about the slides.
All right.
Boy, I left out something. The Southern Baptist Convention of New Mexico has been a great help to us too. And boy, I'll tell you what, we appreciate it. They've been a source of great support.
Absolutely. Thank you all very much. So, you've heard that we're about life, marriage, and families, and that's all that we're really trying to focus on here. But let me give you a little history of how we got started here. Now, some of this you've already heard. You can push the button now. Okay.
Boy, and Aggie engineering on education is great.
Yeah. So you know that it was Richard and Walter that really got together and then drug me into it, kicking and screaming in some cases. But in 2008 is when we really kind of got this thing together and we started to make things happen, even though we started it in 2007. In 2008, though, in the legislature in 2008, as we've said, some major ugly bills were defeated by one vote. The other side then poured a lot of money into New Mexico and changed 5 votes in the Senate. 5 votes on same-sex marriage. They changed. They took those 5 pro-marriage people out and replaced them with 5 different marriage people. It looked like we were doomed. Just wasn't going to happen. And so we got together, and in 2009, when it came up again, we did some things. First of all, we got an impressive number of email addresses. We sent out 45 alerts during that 60-day session, and we motivated a whole lot of people to call legislators. Off script just a little bit. Walter talked about the majority leader asking him to turn the phones off. I went to talk to Chairman Bernadette Sanchez. She's chairman of the committee I'm on. She wouldn't answer the phone, couldn't call, walked down to her office, couldn't find her. Secretary's sitting on the desk crying because the phones are ringing, the email's going crazy. And so I said, I'm just looking for the chairman. Where is she? Oh, she's in her office hiding. So I walk in the office and she's literally hiding in the dark, literally. I said, Bernadette, what's going on? She says, I can't stand it anymore. All these people calling me, emailing me, writing me, stopping me in the hall. I said, well, Bernadette, I don't know for sure, but I might be able to have an effect on all those calls if you would just come out and say you weren't going to vote for same-sex marriage. I said, well, I'm not sure I'm ready to say that. Well, okay. So she had to sit in the dark for the rest of the session. Since our founding as an organization, we have won every battle that we've engaged in. Now, there may have been some that you wished we'd engaged in, we didn't, but everyone we got engaged in, we won. So let's change it now. And here's some of the highlights here. First of all, the domestic partner one. The problem with domestic partners, really, is that it changes us, the family, into me. It's all about me. It's not about mom, dad, and children. It's about me and my insurance. That's what it's about. And I, other than biblical issues, I have a real problem with that too, okay? We also know that in Holland, where they've had same-sex marriage for 10 years now, and polygamy is even legal in Holland now because it's an equal right, they have almost no marriage. Nobody gets married in Holland anymore. Not gays, not straights, not 2 men and a dog, nobody gets married. They have annihilated marriage by trying to make marriage equal. It's not equal, it's annihilation. We also defended embryonic stem cell research, which I personally believe is destroying life in the name of science. We've got a lot of good science out there. We're doing a lot of great things. We don't need to kill people for science. The New Mexico Freedom of Choice Act. Boy, isn't that just sound loving and caring and all that? We have almost the most liberal abortion laws in the country right now. And this would have definitely made them the most, it would have erased any obstacle to any abortion. I'm assuming even after the baby was born, because it was ugly. Death with dignity. That's where we kill old people that are in our way. Unbelievable. The school tolerance curriculum. Now, who would be against school tolerance, except that in the language of the bill itself, it said 15 minutes of homosexual indoctrination every day in elementary school. Now, the one that you might see up there, you say, well, that's not really biblical. That's same-day voter registration. We discussed that quite a bit before we got involved in that one. But what we decided was we could win everything else. We could do everything right. But if they're just going to steal the next election, it was for naught. So we got involved in that one. We stopped that one too. One of the interesting things about our history here is we've been in communication with Focus on the Family, but we are not the Family Policy Council for New Mexico. New Mexico doesn't have one. But we're pretty closely tied to them at the moment. By their admission, we are the most effective family policy council they have, and we're not one of them. So then we had some, next slide, we had some elections that came up in 2010. Okay, we just passed those elections. And here's what we did. There were about 25 pro-life, pro-family, pro-marriage candidates that were challenging in the House. The House has 70 members, by the way. There was some surveys done. It looked like 3 of those guys were going to win with or without our help. It looked like a whole bunch of them were going to lose with or without our help. There were 11 in the middle that had a 5-point spread. And we decided we were going to get involved in those 11. Okay? And so our results were 5 wins, 5 losses, and 1 save. Okay? But those, in the 5 losses column, I don't want to count those exactly as losses. Because here's what happened. In Mimi Stewart's case, she won by about 150 votes, and she spent $85,000 that otherwise would have gone to Diane Dennis or some other anti-life candidate. $85,000 we made her spend. Bill O'Neill was another one. He won by a little less than 200 votes. He also spent by 15 votes. Barely. And he also spent more than, I think he spent $87,000. They spent a lot of money. In all 5 of those races that we lost, we sucked up their resources that they weren't able to apply then to other places. Those were wins. Those were wins. And I think that was huge. On average, our candidates spent $40,000. Their candidates spent $87,000 on average in these races. And we won 5, and we saved 1. So now y'all are wondering about the agenda for next year. That's next. So here's some of the things that we're going to work on this year. The first one is just to define marriage in the state of New Mexico as the union of one man and one woman. That's all that bill says. Literally, the bill says, in the state of New Mexico, marriage is the union of one man and one woman, period. Not a long bill. Now, I have to tell you, in my own personal opinion, this is just a foundational effort. For thousands of years, we've understood that marriage was a union of men and women. Okay? We've understood that. This is not a Christian item. Yes, it's certainly talked about in the Christian doctrine. It's clearly addressed in the Bible. But Confucius talked about it. Aristotle talked about it. The Native Americans on this continent, before anybody with a Bible showed up here, got married, man and woman. Okay? This is not a Christian issue. This is just a common sense issue that we have now lost our sense on, so we've got to put it in law. Okay? But once we do that, there's an awful lot of work that I think that we, the collective we, need to do to build families. The next thing that we want to do is limit late-term abortions. It is a sad note to me that the late-term abortion industry moved from Kansas to Albuquerque. It's terrible. So we've got some things that we're going to do to try to run them off to somewhere else. Preferably the middle of the Pacific Ocean would be fine, but not here. We also have 2 parental rights issues that we're talking about here. One is the right for you as parents to know that your minor daughter is going to have an abortion. Right now, it's insane to me. Right now, your daughter can't take an aspirin at school But the school nurse can take her and have an abortion and then put her back on the bus and send her home to you, and you don't even know why she's sad. And she's not going to tell you. That is evil to me. So, since 1985, we've tried the same bill over and over and over since 1985. This year, thanks to Doneen, Right to Life, we found a new way to go about this. It turns out in 1969, we said, you can't have an abortion without mom's permission, mom or dad's permission. But that was ruled with Roe versus Wade as unconstitutional. That law is still on our books. It still exists in New Mexico law, but is unenforceable for two reasons. Part of it's unenforceable because in that law, there were some justified abortions. There were 4 categories that you could justify an abortion: life of the mother, rape, incest, physical deformities, or mental problems there. Those were the justified abortions in the law. Outside that, couldn't have it. So that was one of them. The other one was that there was no way to not tell mom or dad. There was no judicial bypass. This year, the bill, we're taking existing law. We're not trying to create new law. We're taking existing law. We're adding the judicial bypass in. We're taking out the parts that we already can't enforce, the justifiable abortions. And I am going to make the other side argue that a girl should not have the right to go to a judge. Since 1985, they've been telling us that she needs that right. Sometime this month, they're going to have to say, she shouldn't have that right. We want to vote against this. I think I'm going to have a lot of fun with that bill. The next one is a parental rights bill, because apparently the school nurse can also hand to your children birth control. In the 6th grade, they can put your child on a birth control pill or hand them a condom in the 6th grade without your knowledge. Again, can't take an aspirin, but they can have a birth control pill. We're going to fix that one too. And then, of course, we have some other marriage family building things that we're looking for. How do we get dads to stay there? I'm convinced that our number one problem in America today, and in fact the world, is not fatherlessness. We all have fathers. What we don't have are dads. And dads are more than just a biological father. Dads play, and dads discipline, and dads care, and dads love. Now sometimes dad might be physically present in the home, but he drinks too much or works too much. He's not a good dad. Sometimes he's just not there, and we need to fix that too. And that's what these other bills are working on there. So let's get to the meat of this. What's our mission? As TVAC, our first important mission is to inform you, because this is your government. I don't care about the people. Separation of church and state. No, you cannot separate me from my faith when I walk through that door. If it is as simple as walking through that door separates me from my faith, then I didn't have any faith to begin with. It's your government, and you have to be involved in it, but you can't be involved if you don't know what's going on. So TVACNM.com, its first job is to inform you what's going on. The second one is to provide you the information that you need so that you know how to act. The third thing we want you to do is call you to action. The reason that Senator Bernadette Sanchez was hiding in the closet or hiding in her office was because we focused on her. She got thousands and thousands of calls. You didn't call me. Of course, I didn't ask you to call me. Okay? Didn't need to call me. And finally, we want to enable you to take that action by giving you the right email address, by giving you the right phone number, by giving you the right snail mail address. So, there you go. This last slide I can't do. So Richard and I are going to change seats right now.
The next slide is a couple of things that we want to talk about is what can you do to help? And of course that's the reason we're here, is because we need your help. We've gone about as far as we can go with volunteers. And we've got down to the point now where some of this is going to have to be if we're going to win the battle, it has to become full-time work. And one of the things that we need to do is we need somebody at the legislature to record the votes in committees. We need somebody to analyze those votes, exactly what they meant. This time we had somebody, we were fortunate enough to have somebody to go through the last election process and analyze all of the election results, and that's how we came up with those 11 races that we got involved in. I want to say that Focus on the Family has been very helpful to us in that, and we used some other technology, and it was one that they used, I believe, in New Jersey, where we, on the limited budget that we had, we wanted to send out mailers to values voters. Well, it's kind of scary, actually. There's a lot of information out there about you on the internet that you might not be aware of that's available. But through Focus on the Family, we were associated with a group that went through the list that we gave them, and based on materials, books that they order, magazines that they subscribe to, we went through each one of those 11 districts, and they said, these are your values voters that you might influence. And so instead of just a blanket mailing to everybody in that district, some of them was probably 400 was all that we mailed to. Maybe 200 in some of them was all that we mailed to. But we were able to really consolidate our resources there. And the cards that we went out, maybe some of them saw you, the Focus on the Family made that available to us, a group called the Transform Group, where the cards are all pre-printed with basic information that's been successful in other areas. And we have a little square there where we could put our message in and put a picture of our candidate and what those both candidates actually on both sides for a comparison and what those candidates stood for. And that was really a big help to us in order to be able to maximize the uses of our resources. But one of the things, Bill, go ahead and put that up there if you want to. Can you do the click? No. There's one little deal on here that prevents Bill from doing that, and it's because he's in the legislative session right now. First off, like we've talked about, and then I have some other things I want to talk specifically about, but this is a presentation we like to give everybody, is that you can visit www.tvacnm.com and sign up for our email alerts. And in that area, you will find some informative information. We hope to have, we'll have the bills. We will have a clear and concise explanation of what that bill does. If you need to contact your legislator, we will have information there on how to do that, when the committee hearings are going to be going to take place. We'll have all that information in there, and that goes in with the schedule. And of course, we need your prayers. We've had those, and God does answer prayer, and it's been a tremendous help to us. And then, of course, we need financial resources. And this is something that we always hate to bring up. We really do. But we've been fortunate to this point to have a lot of people to help. We have churches that have put us in their budget. If you can do that, we would really appreciate you to do it. It's legal for you to do that. We have, if you're not comfortable with giving to our political action committee, we have another group, and there's a web page for it, which is Voices for Family Values, which is a 501c3, which there's no question about whether or not churches can put that in their budget and give to them. And we can use the same staff, so that it does help us if you do that. And we've had some of our larger donors, of course, have wanted to do the tax deductible thing, so some of them have done that. But we would like for you to consider at least putting us in your budget for an annual. It doesn't have to be all that much. We can be very effective. We think it's important that we become associated with Focus on the Family because they have some legal resources that we need. They're associated with the Alliance Defense Fund, who's been very helpful to us as well in giving us ideas about what we can and what we can't do. So in order to do that, there's a couple of things that we have to accomplish. Number one, we have to have $100,000 in the bank before they will recognize us. They've had some bad experience in the past before, and we understand that. And the next thing is that we have to hire an executive director. And like I say, we've been doing this, we've had a few people that we've paid some, but we've basically done this with volunteers. And we're getting down to the point we've had enough success that we don't want to let it go away, and we want to continue to be successful with it. So if you can do that, we would appreciate it. One of the things that I think that you could do, certainly, and there's been some talk about it, I think that in your own churches, that it would be good if you perhaps formed an ethics and religious life committee, so that you had somebody. We've found that Christian people want to be involved, they just didn't know how. We actually had an email from one lady down in Las Cruces that said, "Thank you for showing me how to become involved." It doesn't take a whole lot, it does take just a little bit of time, but I think if you can keep your congregations informed about what's going on in Santa Fe and in Washington, that they will be involved. We've found that because through the alerts that we put out through the Southern Baptist Convention, the Assemblies of God, we could generate about 20 to 25,000 emails and phone calls to that legislature immediately, just almost instantaneously. And that's what got their attentions, and that's why in that one session we beat the same-sex marriage bill 4 times. Last time it came back in an insurance bill. So that's the reason we need somebody at the legislature full time, because we need somebody there analyzing those bills and keeping an eye on what those guys are doing, because there's all sorts of, and you know, when I was in the legislature, sometimes I might have used a little devious method or two myself to get something passed that I wanted. I hope it was for the good of New Mexico. But anyway, I think that would be one important thing that you could do. And then I think you could appoint a person from your church as a contact with TVAC, so that we can get them the alerts. And some of the churches have given us their email lists. If you don't want to do that, then we could do that through your contact with TVAC. I think one of the other things that I think that you could do, and many of you may have done that. How many have you done the Truth Project in your churches? Well, that's great. I know First Baptist Bloomfield, we're proud. We had 300 people sign up for the Truth Project. That Truth Project is awesome. And I particularly think it's important for the young people to watch that project, because as they graduate from high school now, they're going out there into the colleges, and boy, there is a lot of information out there. If they aren't solidly grounded in their Christian beliefs, then they're going to face a lot of problems. And the Truth Projects, Joe can probably help me with this, or some of you, starts off, what is truth? What is truth? Who is God? Which that was one tough one for me. I'm going to have to go back and look at that one again. Who is God? Doesn't sound like a very profound question, we all know, but when you really dig down and get into it, it was an extremely interesting. It's a great project. Focus on the family. If you want to contact somebody, there's the group that I hope to emulate is known as the Center for Arizona Policy. They've been highly successful over there in Arizona in influencing legislation, and they are the Family Policy Council for Arizona. And they have just been tremendously. But there's a lady over there at the Arizona Policy Center named Amy Adams. Some of you may have met her. Amy would be glad if you want to put a group together, 2 or 3 churches that might want to participate, and you would like to have her come over. She'll come over and talk to you about the Truth Project and how to organize it. But I think that would be an important thing. And then I think we just have to make sure, you know, and you guys are all, I'm not a biblical scholar. But God tells us what he wants done and what he would like for us to do. And we like to talk about things. You know, when the Israelites went to Samuel and said, boy, we need a king. And Samuel got mad and pretty upset about it. And God said, Samuel, they aren't mad at you. They're upset at you. They're upset at me. So we're going to give them a king. And you've all read the passage. He starts telling them, but you go, Samuel, you go tell them, this is what the king's going to do to you. And when you first start reading that, you think, my goodness, God is an optimist. If you're familiar with what's taking place in government today. But God gave him a warning. He says, look, you do this, you're going to be great. And if you don't, this is what I'm going to do to you. And we all like to go to the passage in Chronicles, is it? You have to get me where, if my people, who are known by my name will humble themselves. But we don't go through the rest of that chapter often enough. If you go a little deeper in there, what does God do? He says, if you fall off and worship these idols, I'm going to wipe you off. I'm going to wipe you out. People will look over here and say, what in the world happened? What in the world happened to that nation? And the answer will be that they forsook the God of their fathers. We all here, I know, believe that our founders founded this country based on solid Christian principles. It was not, I think it was Patrick Henry said, if there had been any idea that it was a revolution against God, that it would have been dead in its tracks. And so we need our congregations, we need our Christian people to understand that they have an obligation, that God does ordain governments for our good. But that's only if we have the Christian leaders that want to do good. And we don't, if there's a law that's passed that's an ungodly law, we have a responsibility to oppose it. And I think Paul certainly demonstrated that. Paul understood politics. Paul understood that he was a Roman citizen and that he had certain rights. And our founders said that we have those unalienable rights granted to us by our Creator, by God, by nature and nature's God. Our president today likes to leave that out. He likes to just say that we have rights. Well, we do have rights, and they weren't granted to us by anybody in Washington, D.C. They were granted to us by God. They understood life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And there's no liberty without life. And to me, that's become about the single most important issue I can define. I think that when you ask a candidate where he stands on life, and they tell you, then he's going to tell you where he stands on fiscal issues, where he stands on marriage issues, because, and the idea that anybody can be a fiscal conservative and a social liberal just isn't possible, because it's those social issues out there that are driving the fiscal issues. Medicaid, welfare, look at all of them. And welfare is a big item in that is single mothers. Janie serves on a board called the Citizens Review Board that reviews foster care. And the stories that she hears just break your heart. And most of the time when it's a problem with a woman and a live-in boyfriend. It's not the biological father that's the problem. It's that live-in boyfriend that they've drug in there. And kids that have been in foster care for 10, 12 years, and maybe in 15 or 20 different homes during that period of time. So we have some problems facing us, and we have some real challenges. With your help, we're going to continue to fight the battle. And I may have mentioned this, I like Dr. Father Pavone's statement that we're fighting from a position of victory, that Christ has already won victory over death and over sin. So we're fighting from a position of victory and not defeat, and we're going to continue to carry that fight. We would like an opportunity to talk to your congregations. A couple of the pastors, they still have their churches after they asked me to come, because it was a new experience for me. Brother Kevin Parker up at First Baptist Church at Aztec said, I'll give you 5 minutes. You know, I thought 5 minutes was a long time, but turned out that it really wasn't. But I got up and I said, well, you know, a lot of things in my life, but I never thought I'd be standing behind a pulpit in a church. And there was a voice in the back of the room said, amen. And I looked, and it was Janie again. You know, she just, she's been a great source of support for me, and I have to tease her occasionally. And then Dan Gregg called and said, we'd like for you to talk to our church. And I said, well, Dan, 5 minutes is not quite enough time. I think I really need 10 minutes. And he says, no, you don't understand. He says, I'm going on vacation, and the service is yours. Boy, I'll tell you what, I didn't know. It gave me a whole new appreciation for what you got, the work that you guys do. I'll tell you for sure, I didn't know 20 minutes could be so long unless I was sitting out there listening, probably like you're right now. I didn't think we was ever going to get through that service. But I think his church is still there and surviving. So if you would like for us to, we would like to come and just talk to your congregation about Christian responsibilities in government. I know you've all done that. We do have a responsibility. We can win this battle with your prayers and your help, and we will continue to fight that battle. So if there's anything else that you have, any questions for me or Bill or Walter, that we'd be glad to try to answer them.